Welcome back to the channel. Today I will be making over this pair of nightstands I picked up off of Facebook Marketplace. After removing all of the hardware so I could begin cleaning, I had to first label everything so I knew which drawers belonged to which nightstand. I would not be reusing this hardware, nor did I want to keep it, so I went ahead and just tossed it. I also went ahead and vacuumed out all of the dust before getting some warm water and dish soap to help remove any of the dirt from the previous owners. I always clean afterwards with just water to remove any leftover residue since it can interfere with adhesion if you don't remove it. Don't forget to always clean the bottoms and the back of your pieces as well. I just finished cleaning them, as you guys saw, and now I'm just waiting for them to dry. It's gonna take a little while. While I was cleaning, I accidentally knocked off a piece of this like decorative panel that they have running down the middle of each drawer, and I wasn't a fan to begin with, but then I realized I hadn't really looked at these pieces like up close up until I started cleaning them. Now I've noticed that this is actually plastic. It's not any type of wood at all. Some drawer fronts will be part of the drawer, if that makes sense. In this case, this is one of those cases where they've built the drawer boxes and then they've added the fronts to them. So in order to attach them, they've screwed them from the inside, which you never see. But I was thinking the inside of this looks really, really good. It's not solid wood, but it's in really good condition, at least the part that I can see. So I was thinking I will unscrew it and flip it over so I don't have to worry about these panels in the middle and what I can or can't do with them. If that doesn't work for whatever reason, my other alternative or my other option that I was trying to like brainstorm and think of was that I could actually try to remove these middle panels and put something else there in place. We're gonna go ahead with the easier option, which is to try to remove these drawer fronts and turn them around and see what we got. With all of these projects I've been creating in this house and transforming my house into a home, getting enough rest is just not an option. And that is why I am thankful to SweetNight for sponsoring today's video. SweetNight is a mattress and sleep solutions company that provides quality products to ensure great daily sleep. Without adequate sleep, our bodies cannot perform optimally, and we know just how important it is for our bodies to perform optimally in order to be able to do just day-to-day tasks, but even so more if we have heavy workload. The CoolNest mattress system ensures you get better sleep with their perfect blend of cooling and support. It helps to keep you up to 8 degrees cooler every night and contours to your body's natural curves, providing targeted pressure relief. It is built of 6 foam layers that helped to absorb motion transfer. The CoolNest mattress is great for hot sleepers, back and side sleepers, back pain sufferers, budget conscious sleepers, families, couples, and even restless sleepers. Unlike other mattresses, the foam on the CoolNest is much more breathable. The square one is the sponge of the ordinary mattresses, and the heart-shaped one is the sponge of the SweetNight. Allowing for better airflow and cooler temps. The foam on other mattresses, however, does not allow for the same breathability and It causes warmer temperatures, more tossing and turning, less sleep, and less rest. If you've been trying to find a mattress with more breathability and allows you to remain cool throughout the night for a more restful sleep every single day and is budget friendly, be sure to use the link down in the description to check out SweetNight. Back to the video. After unsuccessfully removing the drawer fronts, I moved on to the other option, which was to remove the middle decorative panels. I also wanted to update the bottoms of the nightstands by removing the curved edges and just giving them a more modern look with straight lines. I used my speed square to measure and then my jigsaw to cut out the wood I wanted to remove, followed by sanding to make sure it was nice and smooth. I then scuff sanded everything so I could begin the painting process. I wiped off all of the extra dust I created before wood filling some small imperfections and sanding those smooth as well. So we're ready to start priming. I am going to be using the same primer that I used in my latest flip. If you haven't checked out that video, I'll have it linked here for you, also down in the description if you're interested. It is the Kills Restoration formula. It's water-based with oil-based performance. As you guys saw, I removed the decorative ends of the bases on the nightstands because we're trying to modernize these. You guys saw me remove these middle panels that were here. Trying to turn those around was a fail because it looked like the drawer fronts weren't just attached with screws. They might be glued on there as well. I didn't want to risk trying to prop them off and risk damaging the drawer fronts, so I was like, you know what? It might be easier if I just try to find a solution. So I went online trying to find something that was relatively the same thickness as the thickness that I needed for these panels. I ended up finding the Cricut basswood, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. But I'm gonna try to use those to fill in this space, but I am going to do a more decorative design if it all goes well. We're ready to start priming. I'm not gonna be spraying today. I'm going to be using just a brush and a roller. I don't feel like doing any of that extra few steps that you have to do in order to be able to spray. In the long run, it cuts down your painting time by that much more, but I just don't feel like doing it. And I haven't painted with a brush in a long time. That's enough to chat. Let's go ahead and start priming because then we have to wait for that to dry before we can do our second coat. And you know how this works. After 2 coats of primer, I began painting. I'm using the color Mink Brown by Melange in their mineral line. They have since discontinued their mineral line, but they do have the same color available in their one formula, which has a built-in primer and top coat. It's described as a warm putty colored taupe brown, but once it's dry, it actually pulls more cool and gray in my opinion. I ended up doing 3 coats to get full coverage with a light sand in between each one. For the middle panels, I scrapped the idea of using the basswood because apparently it is only compatible with the Cricut Maker and not the Explorer like the one that I have. So I ended up getting their veneer, which is much thinner, but I figured it could still work. I taped it all down and switched out the blade before creating the cut. And the design I created using these shapes and placing them in a way that could give me this chevron pattern. Now this actually took quite a bit of time for me to figure out how to use and how to actually create the pattern because I'm not that great with the Cricut machines just because I don't use them as often as other people do. First of all, do not pay any mind to the mess we have back here. We are currently in the middle of transforming this garage into more of a workshop slash gym area. We recently bought a shed, so we're trying to kind of fix everything, get everything that we need to get out of here into that storage shed so that we can just keep it there and then transform this space. I am recording it all, so I will be updating you guys later down the line once we get done with all this other stuff that I've got planned for you. But now, finally, I am over this whole trying to figure out this Cricut thing. Clearly, I don't use my Cricut enough to not know which blade I'm supposed to use, which blade I'm not supposed to use, which blade belongs to the Maker, the Explorer. There's so many different options. But now that I got that all figured out and I have all of my pieces nice and cut, I am ready to start gluing and placing them on my drawer fronts. I think it would have been easier if I just would have scored instead of cutting through, so that way the design is still there, but it'd be one whole piece that I would be gluing as opposed to a million tiny pieces and give me practically the same results. So I went to the hardware store and I picked up some what's called contact cement. It's like a traditional way of applying veneer because you apply the contact cement to one side, and then you apply it to the other. And this is supposed to allow you to be able to immediately get that contact so that you don't have it moving and wiggling around. So we'll go ahead and start the process and see how it goes. If it's a fail, we'll go back to the drawing board. This actually ended up working out a lot easier than I thought it was, which I was so happy about because I did not want to let any of the veneer go to waste. You do have to work pretty fast so that your adhesive doesn't completely dry on you, but I'm not sure if it was just because I had so many pieces to work with as opposed to if I just had 2. The directions say to allow the adhesive to sit for no longer than 15 minutes for it to become tacky before putting the 2 pieces together. For some areas, I did have to go back and reapply the cement because it wasn't sticking. After I was done placing all of the pieces, I did go in with my rubber brayer and roll it on the surface to make sure that there was good contact. The great thing about this adhesive versus others or even wood glue is that I didn't have to worry about applying pressure via clamps and having to wait a minimum of 24 hours for the glue to dry. Once I was done and I allowed them to completely dry, I went in with my top coat. I did spray it just because it didn't require any taping off and it was much faster than applying with a sponge or a brush. The inside of the drawers were in good condition, but I wanted to add some additional detail, and since I had enough peel and stick paper from the last slip I used it on, I went ahead and lined all of the drawers. I added new hardware. There was also one drawer guide slide that was broken, so I went ahead and replaced it. Now that I am done, let's remember what these nightstands used to look like and what they look like now. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I really love the way they turned out. Thank you so much for watching and continuing to support my channel. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and if you like videos like this, you can check out my full playlist of makeovers down in the description. I love y'all, be kind, and I'll see y'all next week. Bye! Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Glenda and I love to create DIY projects and rescue furniture that I can refinish. In today's video, I'm taking these pair of nightstands I found on Facebook Marketplace for $40 and giving them a much needed new modern look. Nightstands are still pretty hot in my market, so I'm taking full advantage right now as the holiday season seems to usually be a bit slow, at least it has for me in the past. These nightstands have good bones, but they do have a lot of nicks and superficial damage. The first thing I knew I had to do was remove these side decorative pieces. I think cleaner, straight, and sharp lines would look much better. I couldn't find my hammer, so I used a mallet instead to break them off. They were attached with screws too, though. I have something in mind for the hardware, so I'll add these to my collection for later use. Really quick before we get too far into the To make the wood filler a little bit easier to cover a large surface area, I watered it down to a much thinner consistency. This made it super easy to cover all the smaller nicks and dings since there was so many. It dries like normal and I'm able to go back and sand the extra away. For the larger areas that needed filling, I used a 2-part Bondo wood filler. I could have also used a putty for this, but I didn't have any on hand, and this works perfectly fine as well. Two of the drawer fronts had broken corners, so I did use some stir sticks wrapped in tape and some clamps to help build the shape of these corners with the wood filler. I also filled in the hardware holes at this time. So as you can see, after removing the stir sticks, the shape is kind of a little bit off. It's not perfect, but if you overfill, which you should, you're able to sand it back down to the desired shape. It makes it much easier than having to go back and adding a second layer to build it up. To make it a little less mess-free, I used primer in a can, and I am using an all-in-one paint, but because I have so many wood-filled areas, I wanted to make sure to start with an even surface. I've been itching so bad to use power tools since it's been a little while, so I thought this was the perfect project to add a simple design on the drawer fronts. I measured and marked the middle, and then I marked the middle of the two divided areas I initially marked, and then continued to do this and measure and mark until I had 8 sections marked off. I added tape straight across and then set my table saw to the measurements. Ran the drawer front on one side, flipped it, and then ran it on the opposite end, and continued this process, moving my fence to all the different dimensions until all 8 sections or 7 lines were created. Now the depth of these lines are very shallow, just enough to be noticeable. You could also use a straight bit in a router, but the smallest bit that I had on hand was a 1/4 inch, and I felt it was too big for my preference. I also didn't want to go and have to buy a new one when I could just use my table saw. It also would have required me to use a straight guide and run it across the top and bottom drawers at the same time to make sure that they were even. I avoided having to do all of this since my fence on my table saw ensured that I would have the exact distance on each line I created. Hopefully that explanation makes sense. I did accidentally create an extra line because I set it to the wrong measurement without double checking on one of them, but I caught it before I made the mistake of flipping it and doing the opposite side. I filled it with Bondo wood filler, and once it's painted, you won't be able to notice. Ideally, I would have primed after creating the design because I had to go back and prime a second time to make sure and seal that particle board I exposed, but I got ahead of myself. I sprayed 2 coats of the dual all-in-one paint in the color black. back. And once everything was dry, I had to add the new track guides and slides, and I always just order these off of Amazon. I rarely add liners to the drawers, but these were just made of plywood, so I thought that this paper would make the plain drawers look much nicer. Real quick, let's remember what these bedside tables used to look like and what they look like now. Thanks for tuning in and watching my video. I appreciate you supporting this channel. If you enjoyed, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss out on makeovers just like this. I love y'all, be kind, and I'll see y'all next week. Bye.
Welcome back to my channel. You may remember this vanity I attempted to and failed to flip a few weeks back. It was overall in good condition, just very red toned. I tried to finish with some gel stain I was not happy with and ultimately decided to scrap it all together and remove the work I had done and start all over. Since I had already started this flip, I had already cleaned it really well, so here's a few clips of that, but if you missed that video and would like to catch up on it, I'll have it linked for you. When I moved on to plan B, which was to sand everything back to bare wood, I ended up blowing through the veneer not once, but in several different spots. So I ended up scrapping that idea too. I decided for plan C, which was to paint and do a paint and wood combo, so I could try and still display some of that nice wood grain and keep some of its old characteristics. First, I needed to tape off all of the sections I needed to protect from the primer and the paint. For these decorative pieces on the legs, I wanted these to be painted so they could stand out and pop against the wood. I just taped and then cut it to shape with my knife. I thought it would look best if I painted all of the plywood sections and then left the solid wood without paint. I really like using the green frog tape for really crisp lines, so I made sure to use it on the side panel so I could make sure I kept that wood surrounding the plywood super clean. I had a couple of open cans of Kiehl's original oil-based formula on hand, so I used that to spray a single generous coat. On this day specifically, it was super windy, so I stuck to using short bursts instead of spraying more continuously to avoid wasting product that would otherwise just be blown away. Once it was completely dry, I came back and lightly sanded the primer smooth and got rid of any small imperfections or bumps from the spraying. I used my surf prep, but you could certainly do it by hand. Up until recently, I used to use these soft sponges that worked just as great. So you definitely don't need any fancy equipment to do that. I like to personally blow off as much of the dust I've created first before going back and wiping down anything else that is remaining. I missed some nail holes before priming, so I went ahead and filled those in afterwards. Sometimes it's nice to even wait to fill in small imperfections in between coats of primer because the white really makes them stand out. Since the areas I will be painting are not much, I will be using a sample size paint to get the job done, and it should be plenty. I'm using the color Sturdy Brown by Bear. And yes, I do like to occasionally use regular household paint. I know it can be controversial, but I have found that it really does work well, and it's just as durable as some of the boutique style furniture paints when applied correctly. One of the main things to keep in mind with a paint like this is to not overwork the paint because it'll get streaky pretty quickly. You always want to make sure and use thin coats, even if that means having to do additional ones to get full coverage. I have always found that 2 to 3 coats gives me excellent coverage. When I don't use a sprayer, I also like to use a brush followed by a roller to smooth out any of those lines out. Be careful not to press too hard on the roller because then it could leave a more textured look and you're wanting more of a smooth finish. So if you're just starting out and limited on supplies or tools, this is an excellent way to get it done for less without sacrificing on the finish. In between coats of color, I used one of these soft sponges and lightly sanded. This helps with adhesion for the following coat, but be sure to remove the dust you create and then apply the paint just like you did the first coat. As you can see here, the finish speaks for itself. It's super smooth and flawless, just like if I would have sprayed it. After removing all of the plastic and tape, I used the same container I had my paint in and poured a bit more paint, following it up with some water in equal parts to create a paint wash. I am applying this on all of the remaining parts that did not get painted. I did a single coat of the paint wash and then it was time to seal everything. For the sealer, I am using a matte polyacrylic. I chose to use this sponge applicator to make sure I kept the finish as smooth as possible and to minimize brush strokes. I did 2 coats, but I did sand lightly between the two. If you don't have a sponge sander, you could also use regular sandpaper. I added some furniture wax to the drawer guides to help moisten them so the drawers could slide in and out smoothly. After vacuuming out the drawers, I added this really simple peel and stick paper. I was a little disappointed that it didn't have any cutting line guides on the back like a lot of them do, but other than that, it was super easy to work with. Once I placed it in the drawer and I smoothed it down, I took a knife and removed the excess that it had. I find it a lot easier to over measure and overcut and then remove any excess from the drawer as opposed to it being the exact measurements. I followed the same process until all of the drawer fronts were done, and then I put them back in. I did have to re-drill the holes because the pre-existing ones were smaller than I needed them to be. I added new hardware, and lastly, I wanted to add back some patina to the details on the legs. So with a small brush and some dark wax, I just added some around the areas where it would naturally patina, especially on the areas where I wasn't able to remove all of the old finish. And just for a little glimpse, this is how staging usually gets done these days, carrying an extra 20 pounds on me, but with additional hands to help as well. Just a quick reminder, this is what we started with, and this is what it looks like now. Don't forget to leave me your thoughts down in the comment section below. I'm really glad I didn't give up on this piece, and it looks like the third time was the charm for it. I really like how it turned out, and hopefully we can get a quick sell. I love y'all, be kind, and I'll see y'all next week. Bye! Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I will be restoring this MCM dresser I found off of Facebook Marketplace. It's made of solid maple. The maker on this dresser is Davis Furniture. You can see that the original finish has been removed on most of the dresser, and the previous owner mentioned that she had begun to sand everything down and realized it was way more work than she had anticipated and was no longer interested in restoring it. Lucky for me, it cut down on the amount of sanding I needed to do. I made sure to label the drawers as I removed them, and then began the sanding process. I started off with 80 grit and worked my way up to 150. I used my orbital sander for the majority of the sanding.
So I am nowhere near done with sanding all of this, but I am getting closer. I'm just switching my sandpaper here because I noticed that it wasn't doing as good of a job as it was before. And so it's time to switch the paper.
I've gone through 2 papers so far with all of the drawers, the top, and then this one side. I'll go ahead and empty my little canister here because this has got quite a bit of dust in there already. So I switched over to my surf prep so that I can get into all of these little curves, the legs, these little edges here, all on the underside of this, and then start doing the front. This is what I love about the surf prep, is that you can get into those tight spaces that you can't get in with an orbital sander. But I love that an orbital sander, I feel, in my opinion, removes finishes a lot faster than one of these surf preps. I will probably still have to get into like these super, super deep corners by hand. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started.
For the harder to reach areas, I use this tiny manual detail sander and it works so good, way better than just using my hand and a folded piece of sandpaper. I did skip the cleaning before sanding this piece down, and only because the previous owner had already removed most of the finish. Otherwise, I definitely always recommend cleaning your piece before sanding. This avoids any dirt and grime getting into the pores of the wood when sanding. I used some simple green directly into some warm water and gave it a good cleaning. There was only one major repair I had to do, which was the drawer. The nails had come out some and the drawer front needed to be resecured. So I added some wood glue into a syringe and needle and added the glue to the joints, clamped them, nailed in the nails a little bit tighter, and let it sit overnight. The following morning, I removed the caps. I wasn't sure what color to choose, so I tested a couple of stains on the inside of the dresser.
I ended up deciding on the darker stain. I think that's probably a better choice. It's closer to what the original dresser looked like. So let me go ahead and apply a pre-stain conditioner just to make sure we can get a nice even application and not worry about it being blotchy. Go ahead and do that, and then we'll wait for that to sit for 30 minutes like the instructions say, and then we can go ahead and start staining.
The darker color I am using is a dark walnut gel stain. I added some clear wax to the drawer slides to help them glide smoothly. I found this hardware on Amazon and I really like them because they're adjustable. I could not find many options for a 4.5-inch hole-to-hole drawer pull, so when I found these online, I snagged them.
Unfortunately, as much as I would have preferred to have used the original hardware, I couldn't because I was missing several. The holes on the door for the hinges needed to be filled, so I used a wooden skewer and wood glue to give my screw something to grip to. I added moisture back into the drawers with some feed and wax, and then thankfully the original knob for the door was still there, so I was able to clean it up and reuse it. And that was it. Now let's remember what we started with. And what it looks like now. Overall, I'm pleased how it turned out and hope it finds a new home soon. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's flip. I love y'all, be kind, and I'll see y'all next week. Bye!
Hey, welcome back to my channel. This dresser and nightstand stand I picked up well over a couple of months ago, and I initially made it over in a two-tone look. I removed the old finish from the bottom base and paint washed it and paired it with a dark gray paint color. Well, it sat for over 2 months, and with barely any hits, I decided it was time to change the color once more in an effort to get it sold. Here's the initial before and after. Now stick around to see the steps I take to change the color on a piece that I've already redone.
So I am gonna be reusing the same hardware. My main concern with this is obviously the color is not attracting enough people. So what I'm gonna end up doing is just changing the color, and I don't need to change the hardware in order to do that. I think that I'm just gonna play it safe, and I'm gonna do off-white color. I feel like white is very clean, very timeless, and there's definitely still plenty of people who are buying white or off-white furniture. So I'm gonna play it safe, and that's what I'm gonna do in order to get this out of here, because it's been sitting here way too long and I'm just kind of over it at this point. I don't want it in my garage anymore. I need it gone. So I mentioned earlier that this dresser is actually pretty heavy, and it really is. It's made out of solid wood. The drawers is what's really making this dresser super heavy, and it's lighter once I take them out, which is why I'm taking them out, so that I can be able to move this dresser back and forth. Just gonna continue to take these drawers out.
After removing the hardware, I needed to scuff sand. Now, because I know I did a good job in the initial prep, prime, and painting process the first time around, I have found that it's not actually necessary to remove the existing color before adding the new one. Some people may argue otherwise, but I have not had any issues before. Times when I would remove the old color is if I wasn't the one who originally painted it and didn't know the process the person took. If the furniture had actually been used and was already showing signs of major wear, or if it was hand painted, because I find that hand painting is usually a thicker application when compared to a sprayer. So to just avoid having too thick of a layer of paint and or primer on the furniture, which could lead to chipping, etc.
So for me personally, I figured out a long time ago that I, for the most part, prefer paper over plastic. And the reason for that is the paper tends to absorb all of the overspray whenever you're spraying your paint. And with the plastic, it tends to just sit on there. And obviously plastic is cheaper than paper, which is why a lot of people prefer to use plastic, which again, I don't mind it, like for drawers and stuff like that. But for stuff like this, I definitely do mind it. Paper tends to not flap as much, like with the pressure of the air when I'm trying to spray things. And so I don't have to worry about it like flapping back or really getting in the way. To cover large areas, I do prefer plastic. Like if I was covering the top of this, I would probably use plastic because I can tape it down to a point where I don't have to worry about it moving so much and getting in the way of when I'm trying to spray. The first time that I did this, I actually covered this with plastic, and it reminded me of why I prefer paper over plastic for things like this, because I noticed that when I had it on here, it would like move like this. And so it kept touching the doors. And so at the end, I had to go back and just touch up. And so I'm hoping and I'm pretty sure that using paper is going to avoid all of that. It does take more time because this paper doesn't come with the tape. They do sell the paper in the same way that they sell the tape, but it's obviously cheaper to just buy the paper like this as opposed to it being already with the tape. So we've got mosquitoes. They're so bad right now. It's been raining nonstop here in the Houston area. So anyways. So originally I was going to be using the color alabaster because I feel like that's like a really common household color. But I realized that I had this can of the color Sculpture Clay by Behr. And so I decided, you know what? I need to really get rid of all of these colors that I have sitting around that I haven't used. It has that like off-white color with just a hint of a gray undertone, but not to the point where it looks like it's gray. Very pretty color. I think that this will definitely make this stand out a little bit more. And I feel honestly like there's so many more people now that are wanting white clean look these days. How fast it'll sell is really what's gonna determine whether it was a right color choice or not. But I think it is. And I am going to use quite a bit of this paint because I've got the matching nightstand to go with it and all of the drawers. And I already had added water to the bottom of it to mix it, make sure we thin it out a little bit, just so it's not too thick going through the sprayer. And then we'll be ready to spray.
Once the first coat of color was dry, I went in and sanded everything smooth using a very fine soft sanding sponge. You could definitely do this by hand as opposed to using a sander. I made sure to remove any and all dust I created before applying a second coat. Once the second coat was dry, I came in and sprayed a nice even coat of polyurethane in a satin finish. This was done fairly quickly and didn't take me very much time except for the dry times in between as I waited for things to dry before I could move forward. So the next time you have a piece of furniture that hasn't sold and you need to change the color so that you, in an effort to get it sold, then don't hesitate to do it and don't think that you have to actually strip it completely before you do it. As I mentioned before, I am reusing the same new hardware I previously had on there, so I went ahead and added it back. A reminder of what we started with at the beginning, after the first makeover, and finally now after the second makeover. Let me know which color is your favorite. If you have any questions or concerns regarding the process, be sure to leave them down in the comment section below. I love y'all, be kind, and I'll see y'all next week. Bye!